I'd like to begin the proceedings by requesting Sayyid Ali Rizvi to please come here and recite verses from Holy Quran. By Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad Salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والشمس وضحاها والقمر إذا تلاها والنهار إذا جلاها والليل إذا يغشاها والسماء وما بناها والأرض وما طحاها ونفس وما سواها فألهمها فجورها وتقواها قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها كذبت ثمود بطغواها إذ انبعث أشقاها فقال لهم رسول الله ناقة الله وسقياها فكذبوه فعقروها فدمدم عليهم ربهم بذنبهم فسواها ولا يخاف عقباها صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Muhammad. And now, without further ado, I'd like to request our respected scholar and guest speaker, Dr. Hasanain Wazi. Please join me in welcoming him with the loudest of salawats. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Laptop's off. The laptop is off. I just wanted to make a request before Dr. Waji begins his lecture. There are a lot of us that have developed this habit of leaving the hall and coming back in while the lecture is taking place. That causes a lot of disturbance. I try and minimize that as best as I can when I'm sitting in the back by being the doorman, and I take pleasure in doing it. No complaint as far as that is concerned. But I think for the sake of others, it just takes the attention away every time someone gets up and leaves. If you think that you're going to be leaving, I suggest maybe you sit towards the back and leave only unless you absolutely have to. Thank you for your cooperation. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you. Al-Fatiha. السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي عرفني نفسها ولم يتركني أميان القلب والحمد لله الذي جعلني من أمتي سيد المرسلين خاتم النبيين طه وياسين أحمد محمود أبو القاسم محمد ومن المحبين عترة الطاهرين أما بعد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وتعاونوا على البر والتقوى ولا تعاونوا على الإثم والعدوان. صلوات. This is the last but one series in this presentation. Tomorrow is, of course, the night of Ashur, and we will be recapping some of the events of the day of Ashur. So today is more or less a conclusion of the days that we have spent together here, learning, thinking, reflecting on this particular essence in terms of the mission statement of both a society as well as an individual, and which is that cooperate, help each other in taqwa and in birr, and not in sin and aggression. And yesterday we talked about the concept of a society of believers. And before that, the discussion was on how does a human being, an individual, develop with all the things that we talked about, including mental wellness and mental health issues, that we'll try to bring everything to a conclusion. It's almost like trying to put an ocean in a cup. That we try and say, now how can the message of Karbala transform us? It's not, as I say, keep saying, a kun fayakun microwave approach. Only Allah can do kun fayakun, that be and it is. We as humans have limitations, that we have to go through process. We have to go through protocols. We have got to go through practice. We have got to go through hard work before we will achieve anything. And there is no such thing in anything. And if anybody is trying to sell you a quick fix, most probably it's not going to work. Because if it had, then it would not have been called a quick fix. It would have been called a method. So, how does the message of Karbala transform us? And we talked about the potential of a human being. In this particular ayah that we have of Surah Al-Najm says that وَأَنَّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ الْمُنْتَهَى. Truly, towards God is thy limit. It can mean many things, that you cannot go beyond that. But to me, it's an inspirational message to say that my soul, my nafs, and myself, my physical being, must all be in alignment with qurbatan ilallah, the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, something that we talked about in the early days. This is such a sublime vision of our human potential, our destiny, and our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a vision of human destiny which is so apparent in this proclamation to say towards God, towards Allah is your limit. Let us not underchange, let us not underestimate the potential that we have of being the best in the species. And we've discussed that in the past in terms of how we can truly progress, and it's within that context I would like to present to you as to how Karbala can and Karbala must transform us. So let's talk about our nafs, our souls. You know, these souls of ours, with this ayah that I began with, it is expected to soar. It's expected to soar like a falcon or an eagle. It's created to soar through the heavens and is there to find our place near Rahman. You know, we recite Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim every day, and we say Beneficent, the Merciful. Have you ever pondered why the two words are being used, Rahman and Rahim? Talk about Rahman and Rahim. Rahman is, whether you believe in him or not, whether you acknowledge him or not, he is Rahman. He is going to give you oxygen to breathe. He is going to give you rest to eat. He is going to give you everything that you need as a human being because he created you. It's not a matter that you believe in him or not. That is Rahman. Rahim, on the other hand, is a higher level of acceptance where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this is my believer, I am Rahim. That's the difference between Rahman and Rahim. And for us, truly it is to go closer to the throne of Rahman and actually have his mercy put upon us. That is our station. I'll share a story with you, because sometimes if you don't recognize the worth of something, it's worthless. In Urdu they say, Gada kya jane zafran kya cheez hai. You bring the most expensive of zafran to a donkey, he will not appreciate, what zafran is. So we need to understand what our souls are. And Maulana Room has a beautiful story. There was a royal falcon which was caught by an old woman. And when the lady saw the long, beautiful talons and the huge wings, it looked like her chicken and pigeons and canaries. So she took the scissors and clipped the falcon's wings. It was no longer able to fly, and it became a prisoner of the old woman. She didn't understand that this particular falcon is supposed to soar, it's not another chicken, but she undervalued it. We are supposed to soar. Allama Iqbal has said, nahi tera nasheman kasre gumbad ke, gumbad pe, sorry, it just escaped me. I will come back to it once it comes back to me. But the translation is that yours is not a place. On the gumbad, on the mount of the Queen's Palace, you soar because you're a falcon, so that you must soar amongst the mountains. That's where you need to go. And this is truly our value of our souls, which can soar, which can go so high. Our nafs, for example, is an undeveloped kingdom granted to each one of us. We now have to cultivate it. Yesterday we talked about integrity, and yesterday we talked about the human mind. You can grow weeds in it, or you can grow flowers in it. The choice is yours. It's what choice that you make. The nafs is in fact that ambassador that is going to guide us towards that ultimate, towards successful thriving, not just on this planet, but in the hereafter, going towards God. We are told, فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا, meaning that He inspired it, the nafs. He inspired the nafs to understand what is right and what is wrong for it. We recite, we just heard Surah Al-Shams. This is indeed what our call is, and we have talked about, and this is where it will lead us to transformation, where the human mind, we talked about the human mind, the intellect that we have been given, which we share with the angels, and the animals don't have it. We have the other two faculties of anger and of desires that we share with the animals. And as we said before, if those two faculties take over your intellect, then you're lower than the animals. And if you allow your intellect to control your shahwat and to control your ghazab, meaning your desires and your anger, or the faculty of anger, then despite having those, you have controlled it, you're better than the angels, because the angels don't have that particular faculty. So someone asked Imam Raza alayhi salam and said, how can you accept that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be the prophet of God when he showed no miracles? We know that Nabi Isa had miracles that he showed, Nabi Musa had miracles that were shown. There were physical things that happened which people call miracles. The Blessed Prophet did not have such physical miracles. The Quran itself was a miracle. Because it was a different era. People understood it. But Imam Raza alayhi salam gives a beautiful response to this question. He said that the greatest of miracles of Allah is a human mind. This is the greatest of miracles. Can you imagine how many supercomputers are we going to need in order to make just one single move of my finger? The human mind and the brain does it without effort. The amount of processing that goes through would take several supercomputers to even do the smallest of things. Yes, now we have great power and we have data and all that. It still cannot hold a candle, as it were, to the human mind. So Imam said that the greatest of miracles of Allah is the human mind. It allows ideas to be thought through and reasoned out. Islam appeals to human reason, and man must accept God through reason and not through miracles. This is our lot. This is the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That it does not need physical miracles. It creates reasoning. It understands things through reason. And this is the meaning of, I said this is going to be a summary of everything we have said before. I'll be referring to what we have said in the last few days. We're looking at critical thinking. The mind is there to do critical thinking. And every action that we have, that we do, needs to have a meaning. We cannot, like robots, do things without understanding, without seeing the usefulness and the need for it. And the essence of critical thinking centers not on just answering questions and getting answers, but actually questioning the answers. Every time analyzing and evaluating. And we do that. In most cases, in our worldly affairs, we do it. If I'm going to purchase a smartphone or a smart TV, I'm going to Google all that I possibly can, look at every review that's been written on CNET or wherever it is. Everything that I see is going to be correctly done before I will spend that dollar. What about faith? What about something that is going to help us here and in the hereafter? How critically am I looking at the faith that I have? How critically am I looking at the Holy Quran? How critically am I looking at the Hadith? How do they make sense to me? Are there contradictions between the Quran and the Hadith? We know that if there is a contradiction between Quran and Hadith, then you don't take that Hadith, because Quran is supreme. Quran is the one that guides everything else. And sometimes we get so carried away. Anyway, back to analyzing, evaluating. So this woman saw her brother smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day, costing $5. I'm not going away, off a reservation. I'm not selling tobacco here. 3 packs a day, $5 means $450. Over a year times 12 times 120 over the 10 years that he had been smoking comes to about $108,000. So she says, you know what? If you stop smoking, or if you had not smoked for those 20 years, I don't know what the Ferraris cost these days, but in my days they were like $100,000. I haven't checked the price since. But he said you could afford a Ferrari for $108,000 if you did not smoke. So the man looks at the sister, smiles, and says, do you smoke? She said, of course not. I don't smoke. So he said, then where is your Ferrari? Critical thinking analysis to say that somebody puts an argument to you, you come right back, this is the intellect. This is how the human mind processes so quickly. Despite smoking for 10 years or so, his mind was still as sharp as anything to actually give a rejoinder to say, where is your Ferrari? The example is humorous, but the example is to tell you that we need to evaluate everything that's presented to us and not take things as they are without thinking. And truly that is the meaning of transformation. Remember, we talked about transformation, that a butterfly is a transformation. A butterfly is not a better caterpillar. A butterfly transforms from a caterpillar into a beautiful creature that we all admire. But in order for that transformation to take place and to have the correct transformation, it takes time. And using the same example of a caterpillar, and then that goes into a larva or into a cocoon, and then it emerges as a beautiful butterfly. There was this man, he was watching the butterfly trying to emerge out of its container, the cocoon. As you know, the butterfly slowly comes out. It has to struggle to come out. And he was watching for days, and the butterfly could not just come out. He was struggling to get out of the little hole, out of that. And he finally felt pity. And he said, let me help this butterfly. So he opens the cocoon just a little bit so that the butterfly has an easy passage. He was being compassionate. But sometimes compassionate hurts, because if you don't use your compassion at the right time, it creates problems. And this happens in society. And this is psychology. That compassion must be done with understanding. When he opened that cocoon just a little bit, of course the butterfly was able to come out, but that butterfly could never fly. Why? Because it still had water liquid in its wings. It had to struggle through that small hole in order to see that all the liquid comes out and the wings are as light as anything for it to fly. This is the meaning of transformation. We have got to go through hard times. We've got to crawl through that little hole that we have in life in order to be able to have our nafs and our soul actually soar the way it is meant to. Nobody said life is going to be easy. But life is going to be purposeful if you have the intention of making it purposeful. So, when we look at transformation, think about it. Transformation is not going to come easy. And the difference between, again to conclude and to repeat, that changes actually fix the past, transformation creates a future. Change mode means that you desire to improve something that you learned from past experience. The past sets boundaries and constraints in terms of change. Please stay with me on this. This is not an easy concept to appreciate and understand. We need to think. But Allah has given each one of us a brilliant mind to think, and I have no doubt that we can all think very easily on this as long as we pay attention to this. Change mode actually means the desire to improve the past directs what we do. I did something in the past, I need to do better. The past sets boundaries and constraints. Transformation mode is the future that's going to direct your actions to say, where do I want to be? Where will I be going? And it only limits is your imagination and your courage to look at the possibilities in front of you. So change is something different. We use these words interchangeably, like self-esteem and self-worth. But change and transformation are two slightly different things. Change means you can go back to your old ways. Change means that you can revert to what you were doing. Transformation means you do not. A butterfly cannot go to become a caterpillar anymore. It is now transformed. And this is the meaning of saying that I sit here on this, we used to call this Farsh Azza. We used to sit on the floor and we used to sit on the carpet. It used to be called Farsh Azza. I will not call this Farsh Azza because we are sitting on chairs, but that's movement, that's progress in some ways. But as we sit in this assembly of Farsh Azza, as it were, as we sit in this assembly of a mourning of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, we cannot just be thinking of change, because change may be that I may change this month, I may change until the time of Arba'in. Once Arba'in passes, I'll go back to where I was. What we want is transformation, that I will not be the same person as I was when I started on the 1st of Muharram. As I evolve over Arba'in, I will stay there and I will even improve, go transforming even more, so that when I come here for this Farsh Azza, for the next Muharram, I will be a better human being. I will be a more compassionate human being. I will be a human being with integrity. I will be a human being with more empathy, and so on and so forth. This is the purpose of transformation that we talk about. And it's not just about, any single faith. Human beings have the potential to transform as long as there is a clear vision. Dr. Martin Luther King shared his dream. We all know I have a dream speech. He motivated not just the 260,000 people who were there on that day, but he was able to motivate millions beyond the original audience, because he had a clear vision. And he said, I have a dream. He was looking at transformation. Yes, truly, many things that Dr. King tried to do are not there in this nation today. But there are many things that have happened because of the dream and what he had done. He was trying to transform American society. Some transformed, some did not. In the same way, Imam Hussain al-Islam had a clear vision against Yazid, and he said, Yazid has ruined the entire Medina spirit, and I will go out and stand against him for the reformation of my grandfather's ummah. We are sitting here because of that action that Imam Hussain al-Islam took. Today, there are millions, as I said yesterday or the day before, that the sun does not set. For every hour, for the next 240 hours, 24 hours, for 10 days, 240 hours that we have, where the name Hussein is being mentioned every minute. This is the power of the Azza of Abu Abdullah. If we do not capitalize on it, then we will be the biggest of losers. Now, this is a new subject that I would like to introduce, as to how do you transform. I'll give you one example, and you will have exactly 99 examples after this one to be able to transform. And it's going to be easy. This is just one example. The Blessed Prophet said that adopt the akhlaq of Allah. Takhallaku bi akhlaq Allah. Adopt the akhlaq of Allah. So where do you find this akhlaq of Allah? So that they reflect, because the Prophet said adopt those akhlaq. So where do you find this? They must reflect in our day-to-day conduct, in every aspect of our life in our fellow humans. Because we are submitting to Him and none but Him. And the Blessed Prophet tells us to adopt the akhlaq of Allah. As I said, you have the next 99 days, although it's not possible, but you have at least, I think, the next 99 months to work that out for you. Those of you who have understood what I'm hinting at, have understood. These are indeed the 99 names of Allah, because each name is a dua. Each name has got a transformative power, and I will share with you just one example as to how each one of us can do this. That we could take any one of the 99 names and bring that into our life, and we can see our transformation happens. Why is each name a dua? Firstly, we discover His attributes. We study them, and then we live them. Therefore, each name of Allah is a dua in itself. When reciting any one of His beautiful names, you then ponder, you then reflect, you then think about it, and then you say, how can I apply this particular name to my life? That is when the dua really becomes effective. And that dua can become transformative for us. And this is what we have. Because we know that the only way to know Allah is through His attributes. Imam Ali alayhi salam has said that if you have imagine Him in your mind, that is not Allah. Because Allah cannot be contained in the human mind. The only way you study Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is through His attributes, which are His names. Now, these are heavy words, but they are simple words. Firstly, when you look at the name and its meaning in relation to Allah, we call that theoethics. When you assume that name within your own psychology, having studied the name through theoethics, then you bring in what they call psychoethics. You assume that name in your own psychology, meaning you try and live that particular name, and then you've also got socioethics. That these actions that you have as a human being will manifest themselves in a society as a result of understanding the name. Theory, theoethics, psychoethics, socioethics. These are connected. First is to study, second is to apply, and third is to promote or promulgate. So this is what happens. That let us look at the theoethics of His name, that He is Adil or Adl. We're told that your Rabb is not unjust to anyone, meaning that there is no injustice in His decisions. Secondly, He does not ask beyond what we can do. He will not force you to act. You are free to act. We have covered some of these subjects in terms of how a human being's actions are free or not. He will always reward those who obey. So if we understand the theoethics of justice, and we covered this before, that if Allah did something unjust, then He did it knowingly, which would make Him unjust, so He's zalim. Allah is not zalim. If He did it unknowingly, which would make Him ignorant, Allah is not jahil. And if He was forced to do it, somebody forced Him to do something unjust, that would make Him reliant on someone else. That means He's muhtaj, and He is not muhtaj. You know, when we are taught these sifats, sifat subutiya and sifat salbiya, these are not just things to rot when you learn in madrasa and then it's gone out. Every word of this counts. Every word is that when you understand those sifat, then you understand that He is not just. This is how you are able to understand. Therefore, the question of Him doing something unjust does not arise. So that is the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The psychoethics of Al-Adl is self-examination and contemplation. Imam Raza alayhi salam has said that ibadah does not lie in lengthy fasting and salah, but in the amount of contemplation in the works of Allah. Yes, salah is important, fasting is important, but what is much more important in terms of understanding who you are praying to, in terms of understanding the philosophy of prayer, you need to understand, and this is what Imam is saying. So in terms of Al-Adl, I have to ask myself, psychoethics of Adl, am I just in my actions? Every action that I take, I ask myself, am I being just? To the extent, it's easy to be just when there is something in your favor, or it's easy to be just when you're ruling in your friend's favor. But if that level of justice comes where either my friend, my family, or myself are losing out, it's very hard to judge, to actually give justice. Well, we learn from Imam Ali alayhi salam as to how acute his sense of justice was. Imam Ali was called to defend himself against a plaintiff who had a claim against Imam Ali. I will not go into all the details of it in the interest of time. The point I want to make is that Imam was there as a defendant and there was a plaintiff. And there was a judge, of course, in a court. So when the court starts, it was the custom of that day that both the plaintiff and the defendant would sit next to each other, side by side. So the judge calls the plaintiff and says, "Oh, Fulan bin Fulan, so-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, come and sit here." And the man went out and sat, in the chair. And then he said, "Oh, Ya Abul Hasan, please come and sit here." Imam Ali's face frowned. There was displeasure on his face. And the judge says, "Oh, Abul Hasan, is it that you don't like to sit next to the plaintiff? We can organize a special place for you." And Imam's face became even angrier. He said, "You don't understand, do you? You are not fit to be a judge. You have now shown preference towards me by calling me by my kunya, oh Abul Hasan, and calling him Fulan bin Fulan, and are giving me a special place to sit while he sits there. You are not fit to be a judge." This was the acute justice of Imam Ali alayhi salam. That the justice was in his favor. Someone else might have said, "Yes, it's good that the judge is respecting me. At least I will get a favorable judgment." Imam calls the judge to say, "You're not fit to be a judge." This is the meaning of understanding the psychoethics of adl, for example. What are the socio-ethics of adl? To be just towards others, to fulfill their rights. If you look into the annals of Islamic history, the Aimma alayhimus salam, the Blessed Prophet of all, talked about, in fact, the Blessed Prophet said that one mu'min has 30 rights over his or her mu'min, from which there is no freedom except by fulfillment of forgiveness. So if I have not fulfilled my rights towards you, then unless you forgive me or I fulfill it, there is no exception. This is how important it is. So we need to make sure that we are now just to each other. And that is the meaning, the bigger meaning. Social justice is a big word. No, it's not. When you bring it down to a personal level, we must be just with each other. And that is the meaning of the socio-ethics of Al-Adl. The other one, for example, Imam Ali alayhi salam was asked that Allah is omniscient and omnipresent. He is present and He sees everything. If we were to verbalize and not go through each one of them, the theoethics and psychoethics and the socio-ethics, just to shorten this, just to make the point, that someone asked Imam Ali to say, "If I have no other choice, I really feel like committing a sin, what do I do? I want to commit a sin, what do I do?" So Imam said, number one, get out of his universe, the universe made by Allah. Then you can commit any sin that you want. Go to a place where He cannot see you. Where is it that He cannot see you? Stop partaking of His sustenance, the risk that He has given you. Then you can commit a sin that you want. And finally he said, enable yourself to bear or escape the punishment of Jahannam. If it's 102 degrees in New York, we're so uncomfortable. What state are we going to have to try and escape that punishment of Jahannam? So, this is how we imbibe the spirit of those. Food for thought. That Imam said, the Tawheed is believing that He cannot be encompassed in any imagination. This is justice toward Allah. It's a long subject as to Tawheed, the kinds of Tawheed, the levels of Tawheed. But Imam simply said, Tawheed is believing that He cannot be encompassed in any imagination, and Adl is that there is no accusation towards Him. Say, Ya Allah, why did you do this to me? That is not justice. That is not Adl on our part. Imam says Adl is that there is no accusation towards Him. Something happens to me, I need to understand the whole idea of cause and effect, what happened. And that's a grave philosophical subject. But to actually direct an accusation toward Allah is being unjust, and we haven't understood the justice of Allah. I will give you one more example, inshallah we will finish. Al-Halim, the forbearing one, is one of the 99 names of Allah. He is the one who witnesses the disobedience of the disobedient, all of us. One who sees the violation of his amr, but anger does not arouse him. He is not the one who prompted to make swift vengeance, and even though he has limited power to do so, he does not punish us right there. This is his quality, yes. For us, if there is one false move that we make in society, we go through what's now dubbed in the media as cancel culture. Cancel him out. He's out of my life. Just go. I don't want to know you. You're not there. It's called cancel culture. So this is what happens, that everywhere people have relationship issues. We are a society. There will be relationship issues. The old or the young or the middle-aged. Our whole life is made up of different relationships. Being brother or sister, being son or daughter, and the most critical is MIL and DIL. You know what that is? The middle deal, mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Yes, these are issues that we have in society. We cannot escape them. The point is, if we have truly understood the idea of hilm, then we will be not breaking off relationship. We will not do cut-e-raham. We do so many things to ruin his relationship. Allah doesn't cut his relationship with us if we are disobedient to him or if we do something that he doesn't like. He continues to give. He continues to forgive. He continues to give us risk. He continues to take care of us, and he continues to keep his bond alive. If that is the name that we are trying to imbibe within our psyche, the psychoethics of Al-Ilm, then we will not take revenge. That we will not be ready to blast somebody out of the water the minute he does something. Remember I talked about the spark and the forest fire? When that spark comes, my forbearance, the quality that I imbibed of hilm in me, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will protect me from creating that forest fire from that spark. Allah knows so much, and yet He's the most forgiving. We know so little, and yet we are ready to take revenge. The other thing about hilm is being liberal. Being liberal means that you are flexible, not on a way of principle, but there are places where you need to be lenient, you need to be flexible. You cannot be complete black and white all the time with social relations. So tolerance does not mean being tolerant of people who are like ourselves. Tolerant truly means being tolerant of people who are not like you. You have different people, you will be tolerant. You will be more understanding because they may not be like you academically, religiously, socio-economic groups that you have. All this, you can be very tolerant of people that you know, your family, people that you understand. But you also need to be tolerant of people who are not like you. In fact, I do not like to use the word tolerance because sometimes we use the word tolerance, peace, love, justice, and tolerance. But if somebody were to say to you, my friend, I tolerate you, suddenly the context changes. I tolerate you. What does that mean, I tolerate you? The idea is to understand. The idea is to be kind. The idea is to be compassionate. Not just say, I tolerate you, meaning you're there, and I'll accept you because I have no choice. No, that is not help. So the problem with tolerance is that there is always that us and them that we have, and this is where it causes prejudice and so many other things. The other thing I talked about last time is my truth is better than your truth. Intolerance again. And I'll not go through every point here, but you get the drift. I'm fighting against time here. I'd like to finish this inshallah tonight. But this intolerance causes so many things. Economic injustice, double standards. It causes wars. It causes persecutions, religious persecution. All these things that we see today in our nation and elsewhere. Question that arises is, what are we doing as Hussainis to counter any of this? Again, Martin Luther King talked about coexistence and co-annihilation in a book called Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. I encourage you, if you haven't, to actually read the book. And he said we have a choice. We have a choice: non-violent coexistence or violent co-annihilation. Sometimes one wonders where the world is going. And truly, that is the meaning of Nahy Anil Munkar and Amr bil Maruf, enjoying the good and forbidding the evil. So, transformation of a Muslim community must be that we are an engaged community at ease with our existence in the land that we have chosen to call our home. A lot of us still harbor the illusion of going back home, wherever that may be. Or some of us still have that idea of saying, I will go back, or that this society has something wrong with it. Of course, there are many things wrong in this society. But remember, my friends, this is a land that gives you your risk. This is the land that gives you your living. This is the land that has given you all the opportunities. It is our duty, it is our collective duty as a Muslim community to do the best that we can, because that truly is the meaning of intizar, that as we wait for Imam Mahdi, Ajalallahu Fa'ala, that we try and create a least imperfect society around us for whatever we can do. Rather than being in negative states and whining all the time, it is our duty to ensure with our neighbors, with people that we work with, that we actually become engaged and become assets to the land where we live in. We don't live in Iran or Iraq or UAE or Saudi, Malaysia, Pakistan, India for that matter, or Ireland, Germany, Japan or China. We live in the United States of America. And if we have made this place our home, then we better get engaged to make sure that we have our voice, that we are at the institutional table, that we are in the policy institutes, that we are there when policies are being made, so that our vote counts, so that our voice counts. By sitting at home, by whining about things, by being negative to say, well, we have no rights here, or Muslims are being mishandled or misengaged here, we're not going to make any transformation or changes. My appeal to particularly my young people is, get involved civically, get involved in your school board, get involved wherever you are, so that your voice as a Muslim, your voice as a Husseini actually counts, because unless we get engaged, we cannot blame other minorities where they have bigger power than us. Of course they have, because they have engaged, because they have lobbied, because they have used the resources. And we are much bigger in terms of today. You know, Islam is going to become the second largest religion in the United States. We are here. So it's time to share some of our own baggage. I say to lighten the load of the next generation to be Muslim and American in the true sense of the word. The idea of going back home, that bridge has got to be, mental bridge has got to be cut. This is home. A wise man once said that home is not where you were born. Home is where your grandchild is going to be born or is born. That is home. This is the meaning of looking forward. This is the meaning of transformation that we talk about. Today we have 6 million and counting, depending who counts. But at least a meaning of 6 million plus, and the numbers are on the rise. We are on the verge of becoming the second largest religion. We have to find our place in the 21st century America by becoming more and more engaged socially, politically, and in organizations that we have. Yes, I know, I'll paint you a picture of where we live. Just a little bit of light relief after those strong words. In the US, we have wider freeways, but narrow viewpoints. We have more information, we have less knowledge. We have more degrees, we have less sense. We have conquered the outer space, but not inner space. This is where we are living. It's a reality. It's not all rosy here. But we live here. It's our responsibility to change that. We cleaned up the air, but polluted the soul. We split the atom, but not our own prejudices. This is a land of fast foods and slow digestion, of fancier houses, but broken homes, disposable diapers, as well as throwaway morality, particularly in this post-modern era where morality has now become relative. So, the Muslim youth in North America, some of you are sitting in front of me, and we have parents also sharing the same platform. They will tell me, and they will not refuse, that they are torn between maintaining an equilibrium of identities. Who are they? Nationality? Faith? Culture of their parents' origins? Who are we? And this can be a long debate as to where we are at. How can we create futures that are meaningful for the generations to come so that they are an engaged generation and they call this place home with pride, accepting everything that is happening, trying to make a change and yet making sure that this is a better society. Are our youths developing into healthy adults is a question that parents must ask and youths must demand. That we need your support, we need the nurturing to be able to see that we are becoming healthier adults. What role can the home and the community play in nurturing these youths? We have young parents here. Think about it in the next 20 years. Where is your child, your daughter or your son is going to be? What environment is he going to be living in? Decisions that we make as parents and community today, how to practice our faith in the Western context, will certainly define Islam in the coming century. And the need of time today is to nurture a generation of Muslims in helping to overcome the obstacles and blazing a path towards greater engagement in society. Here, this is what Imam Ali al-Islam said, and I quote, "Raise your children differently from the way you were raised, for they are going to live in a different time." This, indeed, is a call that we have to make. Behaviors change with time. Principles don't, but the way we interact, the way we dress, the way we think does change. And we need to understand. I mean, there is this whole literature of, I don't agree with all of it, by the way, but there is this whole issue of millennial literature. How do you deal with the millennials? Suddenly, sometimes it appears to us that the millennials have dropped from the sky and they have special needs. The idea of nurturing the youth is that the youth must evolve as part of the family. Youth is not an entity. Youth is a phase. Today you have a youth, tomorrow it changes. You won't believe it, but I used to be a youth once. Youth is a phase. We all move. And this is where the nurturing comes in, that we prepare the future generations to come in and not be out of tune with their time and place. I quote Shaykh Ustad Mutahari when he says that each generation is responsible for the guidance of the next generation. We don't have to worry about 6, 7, 10 generations. If we can raise the next generation, which is a worthy generation, a generation that understands the ethics, a generation that understands our faith, a generation that is going to be an actively, civically engaged generation, being the best advocates and the best representatives of our great faith, is what we have to do. They in turn will have the next generation. This man, a very rich man, goes to a fortune teller and he comes back and he's not in a good mood. So his wife is asking him to say, "What happened?" He said, "Well, I went to see this fortune teller." And say, what did he tell you?" He said, "You are going to have so much wealth that 6 generations will be fed with your health. They won't have to do anything." So I said, "You should be happy. 6 generations are going to be okay. They don't need to do much." He said, "Yeah, but I'm worried about the 7th generation." You don't have to worry about 7 generations. You don't have to worry about 6 generations. You just have to worry about the next generation, that we are going to equip them with something. And this is where the nurturing comes in. This is where our madrasas come in. This is where our institutions come in. That we all have to work in tandem so that we can help them reconnect. And I'll end with this. That will help them reconnect to surrender to His will, which is Islam. Accept Allah into their heart, which is Iman. Belief in the oneness of God, which is Tawheed. Act with justice, which is what we just talked about, Adala. Lead a life of goodness and morality, which is Taqwa. Avoid the talk of hate, fiqh, gymnastics, negative aspirations, working in negative space. This is, the sum total of it is that we create them this generation to have that level of what we call husn dhan. Husn dhan is thinking well of others, not having a negative impression without even knowing anything. Yes, as a practical person, you know if somebody is trying to harm you, you'll understand it. But do not go harboring su'e zan, which is not a good thing to have. It is husn zan, you take everybody to be good unless they prove themselves bad, not the other way around. And this is the meaning of husn zan, that we try and bring them in. And we need obviously to keep abreast of the times that we have. Imam Jafar Sadiq has said that the person who is aware of the time in which he is living will never be overcome with bewilderment. And this is where we need to keep abreast with what is going on with the social media. You know, what's happening out there. How is social media manipulating young minds? As educators, as parents, as community leaders, we need to understand these nuances, because this is not a rosy society, but it's still our land. We call this place our home, and we're going to do our best to ensure that our children are nurtured in the best of environments that we can get. Salawat. Who will do it? Who is going to do this? Well, we have mothers sitting here, and I believe that a believing and educated mother has the best opportunity to imbibe the children with faith and moral values, because she will be able to raise those children with courage, truthfulness, love and kindness, faith and self-confidence. That doesn't mean that the fathers don't have a role to play. To actually view fatherhood just in material terms, that I'm going to work long hours for the family and I'm done with it, is not going to cut it anymore. I know that new parents are very conscious of this. My generation used to have that attitude. I am working hard long hours and everything else has got to be done by the mother. Not so. I shared this anecdote and finished this. The boy in the house, father comes home and said, "Dad, how much do you earn an hour?" The father had come back home after a hard day's work, and the kid is asking him, "How much do you earn an hour?" Father gets mad. He said, "Go to your room and don't ask me these questions." So the poor boy goes to the room, doesn't say. After a while, the father always, he may be very strict, but the father's heart is always in the best of the children. So he calls the child back and says, "Son, why did you ask me that question?" "I earn, $40 an hour." He said, "Can you lend me 20?" He said, "Now this kid is really, messing me up." So, but still, because he felt sorry for the first time, he gives him $20. He said, "Here, son, $20. The son goes up to his room, comes back, clutching his $20. He said, "Dad, here is $40. Can you please spend 1 hour with me?" Yes, this happens. This happens. We are so busy. We're so busy that we're not able to do that. So it's not just I have to see that my kids get are well-fed, obtain a good education, and are given a good start in life. No, there is more to it. The father's role is beyond that of a financial protector. It is of one equally with nurturing those children, and this is who we are going to do it. So finally, in conclusion, we live in North America, in case we didn't know. Time to share some of our own baggage, to lighten the load of the next generation, to be Muslim and American in the true sense of the word. And the sooner our leaders and parents buy into this, the sooner we will progress, because that really is a meaning of intizar. That is a meaning of waiting for our Imam. May Allah hasten his reappearance. That we await his reappearance to establish justice, to establish a perfect society, to make sure that all the ills on this planet are corrected. But our job is, as we wait in intizar, as muntazir people, we have to create the least imperfect form of society until he comes. And that truly is something that we must all imbibe. Salawat. Mu'mineen, I apologize for being just a little bit over the time, but these are some of the final nights. We wanted to complete the subject that we have chosen, and we hope tomorrow is a night of Ashur. It is a night for lamentations. It is a night for grieving. And while we will present some things, we will go through tomorrow in terms of how poignant and how sad the situation was in Karbala. Tonight, we remember two fathers and two sons. The first father that we remember is Nabi Ibrahim. He says, "My son, I have seen a dream that I should sacrifice you for the pleasure of Allah." And the son responds to say, "Oh father, do what you are commanded. If Allah pleases, you will find me amongst the patient one." So Ismail is a patient one. He is a youth. His whole life is ahead of him. And yet, he agrees to be sacrificed and also assures the father that he will find him amongst the patient ones. This is a legacy. This is one father that we remember, and to perpetuate the memory of this test, we perform the Hajj, where every ritual is connected with the love with the father and the mother have for their children. This was over 3,000 years later, on the 10th of Muharram, 61 Hijrah. History witnesses a situation reenacted in the battlefield of Karbala. Then a sacrifice was called for to protect and save Islam and all its values being trampled by the unclean feet of Yazid. Mu'mineen, as we say, Wahdaniyah, the entire corpus of Tawheed was at stake. Prophethood was at stake. Justice was at stake. And these are the cardinal values of our faith, Tawheed, Adl, Nubuwah. These are the cardinal values of our faith which were all at stake. On the day of Ashura, Fajr time, and Imam Hussain al-Islam calls his son Hazrat Ali Akbar, as we know, and he said, "Your voice sounds so much like your grandfather. Let me hear the azan for the last time." It was Ali Akbar's last azan. It was no ordinary azan, Mu'mineen. It was filled with emotion. How many things would have gone through the family of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam to hear that azan and to be reminded of the good days with the Blessed Prophet. And what had the community come to Imam Hussain began to cry. He remembered his grandfather. Finally, just as the first father and the son had a conversation, this time Ali Akbar is standing in front of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. He says, "Father, I request for permission to go and fight the enemies of Islam." And Imam says, "Yes, I cannot stop you because jihad is wajib." He said, "Akbar, you have my permission. May Allah be with you. But my son, you know how much your mother, sisters and aunts love you. Go and say farewell to them." And Hazrat Ali Akbar goes to the tents, says farewell. It was a heart-wrenching farewell, which is very hard to even describe. And soon after, one by one, as the companions of Imam Hussain alayhi salam were being martyred, Hazrat Ali Akbar now goes to the battlefield. Imagine the scene. Put your hand on your heart and think of what is happening. That a teenage son comes to his old father for permission to die. How does a father allow a teenage son, 18-year-old, to die? Poor Hussein, what does he do now? How does he allow his son? But what had to be done, his promise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had to be honored. As he was sending Hazrat Ali Akbar to the battlefield, he said, "Ya Allah, be a witness against his people. For now, I send against them that son of mine who bears the most resemblance to your messenger in feature, in character, in speech, in voice. Ya Allah, he's the one at whom we used to look whenever we had the desire to sight your messenger. The parting was indeed difficult. Imam helps his son to mount the horse, and as Hazrat Ali Akbar begins to ride towards the battlefield, what does he hear? He hears some footsteps coming from behind. He looks back, and what does he see? He sees his old father trailing behind the horse, and he said, "Father, but we have said goodbye. Why are you walking behind me?" And Imam Hussain replies to say, "My son, oh my son, had you been a father, you would surely have understood how difficult it is for a father to part with his son." As he goes, Imam Hussain says, my son Ali Akbar, I want to see you as long as I can. I will stop here, my son, but promise me, you will keep looking back after every few steps. Oh Akbar, your father wants to see you as long as he can. Hazrat Ali Akbar continues. He looked back every few seconds. Hussain was there watching him. Hussain watched the brave battle that he did, Mu'mineen, after a fierce battle. Hazrat Ali Akbar is overpowered with the enemy, who rush from all sides, and as he falls from his horse, he says, "Oh Father, my last salams to you," perhaps saying that don't come near me, you may not be able to bear. As he hits the ground, the spear which had wounded him had actually lodged in his heart, and the blade remained embedded in Akbar's chest. Mu'mineen, this was so poignant that when Imam hears Akbar's salam, he looks at the Furat, perhaps looking at Hazrat Abbas who lay there, and said, "Abbas, now that this brother of yours needs you most, where are you? Where are you?" With all his strength, strapped by the anguish in Akbar's voice, Imam Hussain begins to walk towards the battlefield. And when Imam got there, where Akbar lay, he took him in his arms, and Hazrat Ali Akbar had a right hand on his chest, and he placed the left hand over the shoulder of his father. He said, "Akbar, why do you embrace me with just one arm?" Akbar did not reply. Imam Hussain tried to remove his hand. Hazrat Ali Akbar resisted. Imam gently moved the hand, and then he saw it. Mu'mineen, what he saw could not be borne by any father. He saw that the dreadful blade spear was sticking out of his son's chest, and Imam laid Hazrat Ali Akbar on the ground, sitting on his knees. He put both his hands on the blade of the spear, and then he looked at Najaf and cried that, "Oh Father, I too have come to my Khaybar," and he pulled out the blade. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. May Allah accept our azah. May He give us tawfiq to be living in the true spirit of Hussaini. May He give us tawfiq to raise a generation that is worthy of the lovers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة، وعلي بن الحسين زين العابدين، ومحمد بن علي الباكر، وجعفر بن محمد الصادق، وموسى بن جعفر الكاذب، وعلي بن موسى الرضا، ومحمد بن علي الجواد الذكي، وعلي بن محمد الهادي النكي، والحسن بن علي العسكري. السلام عليك يا حجة بن الحسن القائم المنتظر المهدي، يا صاحب العصر والزمان، أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.